Hello and welcome to another edition of Luminar Coffee Break. I'm your host, Vanelli. Now, our topic today is how to soften and smooth a background to add depth of field. Now, coming out real soon is Bokeh AI, so that's going to be a huge game changer. But until then, let me show you how we can do that with the current version of Luminar AI. All right, so let me share my screen. All right, so here we have a great shot of a father and son. Now, the background looks good, but let's draw more attention to the son by blurring that background. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to let AI suggest a template for me. I like close-up. And let's select brush up. Ooh, that looks good. Or focus. You know what? I like focus better. All right, so now that we have it developed, I'm going to click on my edit tool. Now, here's a tool, Structure AI, that's designed to make the background sharp and add lots of detail to it if I drag the slider to the right. So, drag it to the right. Look at that. You can see what it does to the background. All right, and notice it doesn't affect the child or the father because it's human aware. That's part of the AI technology. Well, what we want to do is a negative value. So instead of going to a positive, let's crank it to a negative, and now what that's doing is making the background, is throwing that background out of focus, and it's giving us a more pleasing look, all right? Now, if, because we did it in a negative fashion, here's before and after, notice there's a little, it's affecting the face just a little bit, because remember, originally it's designed to go in a positive value to make the background sharper. Going in a negative value, it's going to make a few things like his face or just on the edges a little softer. So what we could do is click on the Add Mask button, and instead of clicking on Paint, I want to click Erase. Let's bring this down to, let's say, like in the 60s. So I don't want to have a full strength applied to it. So I'm going to take either a pen or I could use my mouse. And what I want to do is go around the areas that I don't want it to affect. There we are. And then from here, I can show the mask. And actually, I have that off, hidden. And then we have it right here. Now, I do notice something. By doing what I just did, I'm not seeing the change. So I'm going to come back over to Structure again. And I'm going to hit Reset. There we go. And again, bring it to the negative. There's my blur. Now let me try that again. Erase just on the subject's face. There we go. And it did the same thing. Now, I have a feeling I know what's happening here is I have the beta version installed alongside the actual version of this. So the beta version may be kicking in. So I'm going to try it one more time. I'll hit Reset. So you get the idea. There's that blur. This time, what I'm going to do is this. Let me try painting the effect in. And I'm going to paint the effect into the background. Yep. So, just as I suspected, that's it. In your case, you're not going to have this issue. And yep, it's affecting my masking. So you're not going to have that effect. You're not going to have that problem. But because again, I have to do, which I actually love, is do a lot of beta testing of the current versions. Sometimes it causes conflict. And that right there, I noticed it did. Look at that. So in your case, when you click on the ellipsis tool and you show mask, you should see the red mask outlining the areas. In fact, let me try something here. I'm going to go out of the tool and come back to it. Nope. Yep. So my apologies, is the beta version is conflicting with the current version. However, it's not that big of a deal because you're able to see exactly what we did with that blurring effect. So if you have an image to where you feel the background of the image is competing too much with the image itself, try to blur the background. Now, when you're out in the field and you're out there photographing, like for this particular image here, I'm not sure if they actually put, I know it's a JPEG. Let's see. Yes, they did. All right, let me show you it. So this is a JPEG, and notice it was shot with a 35 millimeter lens at f2.2. So you would think the background would automatically fall out of focus, but because it was a 35 millimeter lens, the background isn't going to get that bokeh effect, or you're not going to get that blurry effect that you normally would if this were shot, let's say, with a 70 millimeter or a 200 millimeter lens. So keep that in mind. Even though this was shot at f2.2, it was a 35 millimeter lens, so the depth of field, it's not as compressed. So if you were to use, let's say, a 200 millimeter lens, with a 200 millimeter lens, you're focusing and you're compressing the background and the subject. So even if you shot that at, let's say, f4, you're still going to get a beautiful blur into the background. So just remember that when you're dealing with shorter focal length, like a 50, 35, or below, the background, unless you're really close to that background, is not going to have that same blurring effect. So if you want it, either use a telephoto lens, or even, let's say, a 70 and above lens, or do what we just did inside Luminar, to where you purposely went in and blurred the background itself. All right? Good. Let's check some of these questions. Good. Is there a Gaussian blur effect which might be able to mask it? You know what? That's a really good question. Hello, welcome from North Carolina. So you know what? You brought up a good point. So let's try this. So the question is, do we have like a blur effect? Well, if we come over to edit again, this time come down to glow. Now, and it's interesting that in glow, there's our soft edges or our soft focus. Now, I'm going to just crank it up to 100% so you can actually see what it's doing. So in a case like this, it did a great job blurring the background. What we would do is, let's say, go through the glow effect. That's not too much. Orton effect usually does a really good job. And Orton effect soft. You know what? Let's go with, I'm going to go with Orton effect. Now let's dial that way back. Good. We can go this route. And then, once again, do the masking. And I want to paint the effect this time just on the subject. Oh, I'm sorry, on the background. So I want to paint the effect on the background, and let's paint it at 100%. Just like we did earlier. There we are. And let's see. Nope, same thing. All right, so I'm not able to see my mask right now, but I do know I accidentally painted it on him, so I'll get rid of it. There we go. And there it is before, after. So you can see, you can actually see the effect. So thank you so much for that. Is it Sly? Thank you so much for that question. So that's another option. Now, A third option, if you really want to get into it, would be if you come up here to the details and you do the same thing with the details. If I take the details all the way to a minus effect, notice it does the same thing. It blurs it, and then we do the same thing with the masking. But out of all of them, I'm clicking on the history tool, and I want to go down where we have structure. All right, so keep in mind, Luminar is non-destructive, meaning I can go back in time and remove any of the changes I made to this image. So, but keep in mind, Structure AI is the only tool that does the masking for you. All right, the other two, you have complete control, but you have to mask it and apply it into those areas. So I hope that helped you on that end. All right, well, that's great. I have one more thing for you. Now, if you want more information on a lot of the stuff that we do here at Skylum, join the insiders group at insiders@skylum.com. It's right here, insiders.skylum.com. Now, since you already own Luminar AI, the membership is actually free. Here we have different topics you could join in on, different webinars, and here's the coffee break that we do on Insiders. The difference between this coffee break and the one we're doing now is you're able to ask questions in real time. It's a Zoom webinar and it's face-to-face, it's a meeting, so you can ask questions in real time. And here are the different events that we'd like to have. New Artist Friday is happening every Friday. And the different groups you could join. You could join sports, black and white photography. We have a French group, underwater, astrophotography, street photography, travel. The list goes on and on and on. What's the difference between this and Facebook? No political garbage. A bunch of like-minded people joining in together, sharing information back and forth. So you'll love the Insiders group. So if you're not a member there yet, make sure you jump right over to insiders.skylum.com. All right, let me check one more for questions. Any, Pat, you're trying to get me in trouble. Any hints for us about how soon Bokeh AI? All right, how can I say this without sounding too cryptic? It's a stone's throw away. All right, Pat? I'll put it that way. So it's a stone's throw away. Look for announcements coming up in the next week or so. So it's not far off. I went out because, as you know, I had the quote week off. So a buddy of mine traveled and we hit a few of the botanical gardens. And since Bokeh AI is human aware, we took a couple models with us and we did some beautiful landscape shots with the models in it. And I purposely shot at 2.8, then f4, f8. So I shot all different focal lengths just to see what Bokeh AI could do. And I'm extremely excited. I can't wait to start showing you guys that. All right? You know what? Let's jump back in again. Good. Thanks for the blurry demonstration. How is that okay. What's that group called again? And that is the Insiders. Insiders. In fact, you know, let me see. I'm going to see if I can type it in the chat. There. So insiders.skylum.com. There it is. Yep, I spelled everything correctly. So, and you might have to put HTTPS in front of that. But again, it's the insiders.skylum.com. All right? Thank you. And what did Russell say? How far can you throw a stone? Oh, God. I just love this group. And I'm so glad to be back. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you at the next coffee break. Thanks again for joining me.